What is your favorite episode of Re:Zero? This is a question that I feel could vary greatly. There's just so many quality episodes that could easily be someone's favorite and it wouldn't be surprising. You've got episode 15, an episode with amazing direction that gives off this movie-like feeling. Episode 18 for having one of the most emotional payoffs in the series. Season 2 episode 4 for its relatable introspective into family and the pressures of living up to it. Even the latest episode out right now was so good I wouldn't be surprised if someone told me that it's their personal favorite. These are just a couple examples from a masterpiece that has stacks upon stacks of brilliant episodes that had such an impact on people and affected them in different ways. However, my personal favorite is objectively not the best directed. Not the best animated, doesn't have the best fights, and doesn't even have the most emotional moment in the story. But it holds a very special place in my heart that till this day gives me this feeling that no other episode has ever been able to achieve. And it's the episode that made me fall in love with Re:Zero. I'm sure many people don't know this, but in my personal opinion, I believe that season 2 is the best season of the series so far. It made me fall in love with all the characters, made me realize just how interesting the world building and mystery is, and cemented Subaru as one of my favorite characters of all time. And all of this is beautifully shown in the penultimate episode of the season. Episode 24 embodies everything I love about this series, from its character work, its multi-seasonal payoffs, and that triumphant feeling you get after watching endless amounts of the most horrible things that could possibly happen and somehow persevering and coming out on top. Don't get me wrong, I know there's a lot of hype surrounding the latest season and it 100% has the potential of being the best. As a novel reader myself and as someone who's seen how much love and care has been put into my favorite arc of all time, it most likely will be the greatest season the show's ever produced. However, as of right now, with the content we've received from season 4 compared to season 2, the latter has a very good lead ahead of the former. And that's not to demerit season 4 or anything, it just goes to show how good the second season of Re:Zero truly is. Re:Zero is a story that at its core is about its characters and their development, and season 2 spends a large majority of it taking its time to give us a really good understanding of the main cast, their motives and why they are the way they are. This is a season that's often described as confusing, a bit slow at times, and very disjointed compared to the rest of the show, which is completely understandable. It's a grueling process watching each and every person being given development all in one season. There's times where you might be wondering where the story's trying to go, and because of how disconnected it is from the overarching plot of the royal selection, it's easy to disassociate from it. However, from my own personal experience, I found that each episode kept getting better and better, improving on its mystery, and the more details that were revealed made the journey more rewarding. This season is like a puzzle that you're slowly working towards building it piece by piece, figuring out what's really going on, getting a better grasp of the situation, until ultimately you're left with the final product. Episode 24. It feels weird to say that because there is another episode after this, but I feel this episode is the accumulation of all that work you've put in and it feels so rewarding. At this point, almost everything has been dealt with. The assassins have been defeated, Roswell has been forced to let go of the physical manifestation of his obsession, Amelia's completed the trials. We're getting closer and closer to resolving everything that's posed a challenge for the group. All that's left is the White Rabbits that's being desperately kept at bay by Amelia, and a librarian who spent almost all her life fulfilling a promise that never should have been made. Re:Zero has been a series that's made itself clear on the importance of promises and the consequences of not keeping them. The best example is actually from a video I made recently talking about episode 13 and the confrontation between Subaru and Amelia. If you haven't seen it, then I highly recommend it. But anyways, it's been told to us how important it is to keep promises. They serve as a verbalized vow linked to trust and respect. Breaking it is the equivalent of throwing away that trust and respect. However, when we look deep into Beatrice's history, the amount she's had to sacrifice to keep this precious promise to her mother, it goes to show how it's not as black and white as it was originally perceived. Just as it's important to keep them, it's also important to understand how it would negatively affect the person you're making that promise to. Being essentially abandoned and forced to wait for someone who doesn't exist goes far beyond the definition of cruelty. 400 years in isolation and clinging to these words that hold no weight behind them at all. Time that I'd never be able to process no matter how hard I tried for the rest of my life. Subaru and Beatrice's back and forth of acceptance and denial that ultimately leads to that final conversation is one of my favorite moments in the series. For the entire show, it's been hard to gauge Beatrice's character. There are times where she's been helpful to Subaru but always seemed to keep everyone around her at arm's reach. There was always that hint of loneliness you could feel from her, but without much to go off of, it was no more than speculation. But by this point, we understand everything. Beatrice's isolation, her fears, and ultimately how kind she truly is. All she's ever wanted was for that person to save her, to free her from this prison she willfully stayed in for 400 years. But that person doesn't exist, and sure as hell isn't the bumbling idiot known as Natsuki Subaru we've all grown to love. His decision to want to take Beatrice out of this library doesn't come from some larger than life promise or to inherit knowledge superior to the rest of the world. His desire comes from simply caring for her, wanting to bring her to a future where she's loved and cherished. Give her that thing she deserves more than anyone else. It would have been so convenient to take the easy way out and accept the lie that Natsuki Subaru is that person to her. She even admits it. If he had told her that he is that person, she would have taken his hand even if she knew he was lying. But Subaru knows that's the last thing she needs. Beatrice has lived a life for 400 years. His adamance that he is not that person but still wants to take her hand anyways is so heartwarming. Their final conversation where they're at a standstill, both stubbornly refusing to give up. Beatrice with her promise and Subaru with his desire to take her hand. The mansion's engulfed in flames, with nothing else to do but to listen to Subaru's final words. And you see his understanding of her, how well he truly knows Beatrice to her core. Being able to say the words she needs to hear the most, the words that she's been waiting to hear for centuries. Beatrice is one of the most stubborn characters in the show, and to see her even now trying to deny his hand despite her eyes telling a different story, it just goes to show how hard it is to let go of something that you've known for as long as you can remember. And that final line, the one that drove this already perfect scene into new heights. You want someone to take you out of here, don't you? Isn't that why you always sat in front of that door? This entire scene, this entire episode took my breath away. And that last scene, oh that last scene, arguably one of the best endings to an episode this series has produced till this day. Watching Amelia's relentlessness to never give up while facing these impossible odds, Subaru showing up in the nick of time now having fully formed a contract with Beatrice, and taking their stand against the last obstacle that blocks their path forward. This season can be described as turning the impossible into reality. It's just been problem after problem after problem, new threats, so many different issues to juggle, making it hard to fathom how Subaru can come out on top. This should have been impossible, but by allowing himself to give some of that burden to others, by allowing himself to trust in everyone to do their parts, the impossible was achieved. And this right here is the fruits of not only their labor, but the journey we were fortunate enough to follow. This aired in the great year of March 17th, 2021, over 5 years ago. And despite that, my memory of watching this for the very first time has stuck with me for all these years. I remember hearing those lines and having to pause it for a couple of minutes to catch my breath. I remember finishing the episode and instantly watching it again and again because of how much it hit me in the gut with all these emotions. I've said this before, but my first time watching this series, I didn't understand Re:Zero. I looked at it from a broad perspective and never attempted to understand what the story was trying to convey. But with the second core of season 2 being released weekly, everything started to change. I'd watch an episode and think to myself, that was really good. And with each passing week, my feelings for the series became higher and higher. I'd have thoughts such as, was the series always this good? I found myself excitedly waiting each week for that new episode, loving every second of it, and all of that accumulation exploded in that penultimate episode. I couldn't deny the facts anymore. I couldn't believe how blind I had been this entire time. Re:Zero is a masterpiece that I didn't understand until that very moment. And after I finished it, I rewatched the whole series in shock. It had always been that good, I just never realized. Episodes I brushed off suddenly became some of my favorites to date. And it's why till this day, no episode has made me feel that type of way that Re:Zero Season 2 Episode 24 managed to make me feel. That was my journey into discovering my love for the series, but I'm curious about everyone else. I started the video asking you what your favorite episode is, and I mean it. If you've made it this far, leave a comment down below on what your favorite episode is and give your thoughts on how it made you feel. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving it a like, and subscribing would be greatly appreciated. Re:Zero is going to start airing next week, and I'm sure you're all just as excited as I am. But with that being said, that's all I have to say for now. See ya.